we'll now move over to the regular council meeting. Call the regular council meeting of Tuesday, November the 12th to order. There is an agenda in front of you. A motion, please, to adopt the agenda. Councillors Niche and Cunningham, any additions or deletions? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Before we move into the main business, I want to acknowledge the passing of former Premier John Horgan. The city has a prepared statement, and I'm going to read that out, but then if there's any member of council that wants to speak to that, now would be a great time to do that. So here's the city statement. The City of Prince Rupert, the Mayor, Council, would like to express our deepest sympathies to the friends and family of former Premier John Horgan. Premier Horgan served BC in a challenging time, not only for our province, but for the world as a whole during the pandemic. He was an early supporter of the Resource Benefit Agreement for communities in the Northwest. The first meeting with leaders from our area in 2017 and committing his government to supporting it. His government also passed the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, becoming the first jurisdiction in North America to implement the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. He's left behind a lasting legacy for BC, and he will be dearly missed. With that, if there's any member of council that would like to make a comment. Councillor Adey.
Just a personal comment. When my brother passed away a number of years ago, Premier Horgan was in power, and they knew each other because my brother was a voice in the early version of the blogosphere, who achieved a certain amount of prominence. But when he passed away, Premier Horgan reached out to me via Twitter, of all things, with a personal message that was very moving, and it spoke to me of what I think is true of his personality, that once you get past the reality of being a politician, there was a real human being in there with a great deal of personal warmth. And I know that I very much appreciated him reaching out in that way. And it was a testament to who I think he was as a person.
Councillor Cunningham.
My personal experiences with Premier Horgan was very similar. He was a very personal person. He was definitely a friend of Prince Rupert, and he always had time for anyone. You know, it didn't matter who they were or where they were. He would stop and talk to you, or whether it's at a convention or just walking down the street. And I think he'll be his type of politician or a thing of the past, unfortunately.
Any other comments? Councillor Randhawa.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so I had a honor to meet him in this chamber, and yeah, you are right. Like resource benefit, he started, and we discussed that time over here. So my condolences with his family.
Thank you. Councillor Forster.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Similar to everybody, as a labor leader, many of us are quite saddened by this. Premier Horgan did a lot for a lot of the different people working in labor. He promoted safety for workers, and he stood behind what he said he would do. And so this will be a big loss to a great many people. It's not a secret. He battled cancer. And so I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone that there's lots of screening that as we age, we can get done. And it's something he's called on many people in the public to do.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll continue on with the agenda. Next item up is public comments regarding any item that is on the agenda. I'm not going to drag it out. We'll move on then to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, there are minutes for approval, minutes of the regular meeting of October 28th, minutes of the Committee of the Whole of October 28th. There are 4 reports, a report from the Chief Financial Officer with regards to the financial variance report, report from the Deputy City Manager about the Fulton and 3rd traffic light review, a report from the Fire Chief for, with regards to the monthly fire rescue report, the report from Planning, and that's the Development Activity Report for October. In addition, there's correspondence for approval, which is the request for a proclamation of November as Adoption and Permanency Awareness Month. Recommendation is all items on the consent agenda be approved or received as requested. Councillors Cunningham and Niche, any discussion on any item in the consent agenda? Councillor Cunningham.
Yeah, on number 4, report from the Deputy City Manager, Fulton and 3rd traffic light. Been getting a lot of comments and feedback about that. You know, like how much more efficient it is, how much easier it is working. There's no lineups, even as the report says during peak hours and that. The traffic seems to be flowing very well in that. And I think at this time replacing it, and in the report it says in the next 15 years, well, $350,000 right now is more important, I think, than that. And, you know, I don't know. I think we should take a very close look at replacing that right now. I just find everyone I've talked to just loves it the way it is.
Yeah. You'll have opportunity once we get into the budget discussion to really pull that apart. But if there are any questions specifically about the report for DCM Pucci? Oh, Councillor Forrester.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question specifically about the report is that if maybe there needs to be a bit of a quote. If we pull out the existing lights to put in stop signs, is there a much higher cost to put them back in? So it's $350,000 to replace them. Is it much more to reconvert back? And so that's not in the report. Is if we went with stop signs and realize in 5 years we need to go back, what is the cost differences?
Good question. I'll just reveal a quick conversation I had with DCM Pucci this afternoon, which is along those lines but different. And that was, you know, is there any risk to just leaving them the way they are, flashing, you know, rather than stop signs, right? And, you know, is there any chance that it fail or whatever? To which, well, I'm not even going to answer it because DCM Pucci is going to answer your question and tell people what you said to me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor. So the lights can stay the way they are right now as flashing. The concern, obviously, is that the stoplights are connected, so for pedestrian access as well. So right now, if someone is stopped, they have to get the attention of a driver and go across just like any other four-way stop. Typically, those four-way stops are a little less busy, but it is operating fine now. So all in all, at this point, it can stay the way it is. And if for some reason it gets worse or we have to take it down completely, then we can put in stop signs. But the recommendation at this point is if council wanted to keep it the way it was, that it would stay as flashing red until such time as it either completely failed and we would have to take it out. But there isn't anything at this point that would say that it's going to completely fail.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We now move on to reports. We have a report from the Manager of Communication, Engagement, Social Development request to support a joint application to UBCM for Indigenous Cultural Safety and Humility Training Program. The recommendation is that Council support a joint application to UBCM's Indigenous Cultural Safety and Cultural Humility Training funding stream in collaboration with North Coast Regional District and the District of Port Ed for $110,000 to support the development of a joint staff training program for our region. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillors Skelton Morvan and Councillors Forster. Any questions? Councillor Skelton Morvan, is that a lingering hand?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I think this is really critical and important. And doing this in a joint initiative, I just wanted to thank the Manager of Communications and Social Development, for putting this initiative forward. But if I guess the only curiosity I have now is there a way for us to tie in, aside from the staff aspects, but the elected officials as well, between the North Coast Regional District, our own council, as well as the District of Port Edward as well?
You're talking about included in the training.
Yes, all of us, leadership, management, elected officials.
I would think that'd be a great idea. DCM Pucci, is that contemplated?
I will ask our communications manager.
Manager Stewart.
It wasn't contemplated in the initial scope of the proposal as it stands, but it's a generalized training program, so could apply to anyone that each individual organization wanted to take it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Sorry, Councillor, I just saw, I never know whether it's a lingering hand or a new one.
Yeah, no, that's just the challenge of being here. Yeah, I would have my video on, but just for context sake, I'm in a development that does not have reliable internet. But no, I was just going to say that I think for sure that I think that's great that it's generalized, and that we can find a way to have as much attendance as possible. I know that it's voluntary, but I think it's really critical, especially operating in the traditional territory and each of our districts between the North Coast Regional District, the District of Port Edwards, and then also the municipality. We have a very high Indigenous population. I think this would be really critical to building that understanding and finding a really strong collective path forward. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We have a report from the Deputy City Manager with the following recommendation: that Council considers the information provided in this report and directs staff to provide any further options required prior to consideration of the bylaws, and those bylaws are the water, sewer, solid waste, and the subdivision and servicing bylaws. DCM Pucci, I'm going to turn it over to you. Why don't you take us through this rather lengthy, but most of it is sort of form, but there's some real important points in here. Why don't you take us through it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think that we've really gone over option one quite a bit. And option one is what was proposed originally in the budget and is still on the table. Option one basically is showing the smoothing of rates as sort of best known right now for the amount of borrowing that we need to do. It contemplates a 6% annually in water with an 18% in 2029. For water, sewer rates is 18% annual and a 2% in 2029 for sewer. Solid waste rates were 6% annually. Some of the fee increases that were noted by council were the service fee increase from $3,218 to $7,600 for water. Sewer and storm fees were $2,782 to $6,000 each, and then small fees for water on and off and sewer callouts, as well as some small fees for inspection chamber, and liquid waste fees were just over doubled from $75.50 to $150 per ton. These rates were based on full cost recovery. They were done in conjunction with the finance department, and so we presented those first, and then we were requested to come back and look at a non-smooth way to sort of look at the out-of-pocket total per person, or per household, sorry. And so there was an option two that I brought forward in the committee of the whole at the last meeting, which showed water rates increased by 2% in 2025. Sewer rates would increase by 2% in 2025. And solid waste rates would stay the same as option one at 6% annually. This is because we wouldn't know the financial position necessarily, and we would look at it again. However, I have to note that if we do the non-smooth approach in option two, there are significant increases in the future years. For example, in sewer in 2026, there would be a contemplated 45% increase followed by a 20% increase. followed by 7, and then a 3. Now, these obviously contemplate full borrowing. They don't contemplate any putting any money against borrowing. We also had some notable changes to lower the fees associated with servicing. So we dropped the water service fee down to $4,500 and also the storm and sewer fees to $4,500. What this does is we listen to council and it looks at a little bit of subsidization from the utility for any new servicing, and that would help to increase development in the area. We lowered the inspection chamber. We kept the inspection chamber the same. We held the rates at the landfill for minimum tipping fees in option 2. We also only 6% increase on the liquid waste fee from $75.50 to $80 per ton instead of $150. And there was some minor changes associated with some language that was noted by some council, which we reviewed and changed. And basically, we came forward with that, and it was noted as a good middle ground. However, we need to know if council is looking for us to come up with a third option, which I understand we likely will get direction for. Thank you.
Councillor Adey.
To that end, then, I'm not sure what the order of doing these things is, but I would like to make a motion that we ask for a third option. I have the wording here that I can pass over to.
Go for it.
The wording is that in addition to option 1 and option 2 identified in utility bylaw deliberation, that staff develop an option 3, which explores the best value for the housing service funding applied with the intention of relieving the cost burden on taxpayers for utilities, taxes, or a combination of the two.
Seconded by Councillor Randawa. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Councillor Forster.
Sorry, I was just voting yes.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Niche.
So I appreciate the willingness to look at different options. As the first one was not really, I would say, not liked by anyone in the room. Option 2, where we talk about the thing that I want to talk about the most is the once again is the the water, sewer, and storm connection fees, and I appreciate the fact that you want to lower those down to $4,500, but from my understanding that's just for 1 year. And my thoughts on it are the saying is, you got to pay money to make money. And I just really want to try and instill the point that, these services, actually, storm is not necessarily, storm could be, storm connections will be paid for by current homeowners, where they're not currently connected and maybe they're into a sewer line right now and they will have to pay for a storm connection now. But the reality of a water connection and a sewer connection, they are paid for strictly by people that are building new builds. So once again, an empty lot could be $500 or $1,000 a year in taxes, and if it stays an empty lot, it's $500 or $1,000 a year in taxes. If we invest by providing a service at a decent cost, I hate the word subsidize because it's not subsidizing it when if we do it at a decent cost, which yes, it may cost us money that year, in 2 to 3 years, we're going to see the returns on our taxes. And we're going to see a new household that comes into place that will be paying $5,000 to $7,000 a year in taxes, maybe more, depending on the value. It could be $8,000 or $10,000, depending on the quality or the size of the house. So, you're going to regain those, what you're calling a subsidization. You're going to gain those back within, 2 to 3 years, and moving forward for the next 50 to 100 years, you're going to you're going to be making a substantial amount of money on taxes from that house that wasn't there before. So, I did look up other communities, and I think, $4,500 is a fair value in comparison to other communities. It's higher than some, it's lower than others. So, I can understand that there is a more of a cost to it, and just like everything, there is increases every year. So, 4,500 does seem fair, but I think we need to look at that as more of a long-term solution, because those services are service connections on new properties, and this isn't something that a normal homeowner is phoning up and saying, "Hey, I need a water connection." We've already got every house in our town is tied to water already. Every house in our town has a sewer pipe to it. Not every house has a storm connection, so that's why I differentiated the difference on that. So, I appreciate the liquid waste, bringing the value of that down, because I think that we need to support our local businesses. I appreciate the fact that you've changed the thought process on allowing combined loads. So I appreciate that as well. So really, my only kind of thing that I feel that really needs to be looked at more in the long term is that if we want people to invest in housing, it's not subsidizing them. It's we're paying money to, like, what do we got? 5,000 houses in town. So if it costs $10,000 to hook up a house, that's $2 per household. So yes, every taxpayer is going to have to pay $2 to help hook up that new guy, but they're also going to be collecting thousands of dollars in taxes. So they're going to be gaining $10 in taxes. So they're not subsidizing it. They're just paying into the water fund and gaining it back on taxes. So once again, I just need to point that out. I mean, in comparison to other communities, I think 4,500 is fair, but I don't really want to see those, next year, all of a sudden you come to us and say, well, it has to be $10,000, because we just have to take a different approach on it. As you can see, we've done all sorts of different, ways to try and encourage people to build, and that hasn't worked. So if you're going to hammer them with another $10,000 in costs on connections, that's only going to make it worse for people wanting to build new homes.
So just for clarity, Councillor, you're saying that the 4,500 is acceptable, but you wouldn't want to see it go higher. Am I clear on that?
I'm saying that, obviously I'd prefer it stayed, lower, because, we're already struggling to get people to build here at the current cost. So increasing it is only making it worse. But I will say that in comparison to other communities, it's in the middle ground of most communities. And I do understand that we are in a place that it does cost us more to do things here because of the terrain. In Terrace, if they were going to build a storm connection or a water connection, it's dig a ditch, throw a pipe in it, they're covered up, they're gone that day. Whereas, I can use mine as an example. When they tried to do the storm connection on my new build, it was weeks of, there was a hole in the ground that was into the street and all through the sidewalk, and it was a massive endeavor. So I do understand that we have a cost that is higher than most communities, but I also want to just show the point that if somebody builds something, there's going to be a huge tax increase to our community. So you're not really subsidizing it. You may be subsidizing it through the utility fund, but you're gaining by adding a house and adding $7 or $8 or $9 or $10,000 a year in taxes. So if you take the two numbers and you combine them together, we're making money. We're not losing money.
Point made. All right. Anyone else? Councillor Cunningham.
So is it my understanding that you're going to allow combined loads now for waste?
I believe that's correct, DCM Pucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor. Thank you. It's contemplated right now in option 2, yes.
Councillor Skelton Morvan.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to echo the notion of what Councillor Niche is getting at. I think for us to de-incentivize through pricing and different things like that, I think kind of holding the line where we're at, but also this kind of ties into some of our previous discussion around utilizing the housing fund and other things and grants that we've sourced to kind of, again, de-risk the land. And in that sense, I mean to develop and open up new plots and subdivisions and different things like that, so that it is more attractive for investors to come and build those new homes, whether that's apartments, single family, multifamily, etc. So I'm just, I just wanted to echo those notions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? Councilor Randalla.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, if we have, I know our Legacy Fund supporting many capital projects. So if we have any more room to support any more capital projects, and so we can reduce a little bit more taxes on this side.
DCM Pucci.
I mean, I can't speak for the legacy board, but I can tell you that at this time there wouldn't be any more room. There is a dividend that we have to consider to the city of Prince Rupert, and it's I don't think there would be any more that we could bring forward. Thank you.
Is that a new hand, Councillor Skelton Morven?
No, this one is actually a stuck one that I'm trying to get down.
Thank you.
My screen is buffering right now. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Again, we're not making a decision on the bylaw. If you want something different from what you see, though, it would be good tonight to provide that direction to staff or questions you have, because this is going to lead to a bylaw coming back to us. There is the direction on the options, as already been moved. Councillor Niche.
If it's a certain direction, then what I would like to put forward then is that not just for the 1 year, the $4,500 for connections, but for maybe the 5 years for connections, and try and hold the line on the connections, because I feel that that's fairly important.
DCM Pucci?
Staff, we've noted that. Thanks.
All right. Well, the public continues to have opportunity to have input. You can email to mayor and council and finance. You can do the different things that have been suggested in the presentation. There is the planner that you can play with on the city website. So have a look if you want to get involved, have your voice heard. And after the 15th council, will wrestle with all of that to make some difficult decisions. The good news is, and I think it's worth stating, I mean, we focus on the numbers of percentage increase, and I get it. It's important. If you're a homeowner, you're watching and you care, right? And if you're a renter, you care because you pay for it eventually through your rent. But what should not be lost sight of is this is a massive capital budget. We're spending well in excess of $100 million to substantially upgrade the community's infrastructure. And we can have our challenges around the taxation and that piece, and I'm sure council is going to come up with some great ways to try to keep that down as much as it can. But because of the grant money that's been raised, because of the Resource Benefit Alliance, which we fought for, because of Watson Island contributing the way it is through Legacy, there is a ton of capital work being done in the community that is not at a direct cost to the taxpayer. It is coming out of other sources of funding. That's because previous councils fought hard to get Watson Island on track. This council's continued that push. The same can be said of the RBA. It was a multi-council effort that finally came to be. But we are part of a generation that is renewing Prince Rupert for the next 100 years. And I think it's incredibly important that we keep our eye on that ball. And our staff have been doing just an amazing job of making that a reality. Council, it is your opportunity for any comments or questions just about other matters. I've worn you out. It doesn't happen often. All right. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilors Cunningham, Nish, all in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Meeting adjourned.